call.
Danny Wiley,
Present.
Charlie Ramirez,
Present.
Jonathan Laraga,
Present.
Romeo Robles,
Present.
Rafael Munguia, Luis Madrigal, Andy Castro,
Present.
Guadalupe Cano.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Motion to excuse the absence.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to excuse the.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Public testimony.
No one has signed up, Mr. Chairman.
The minutes of September the 12th for approval. Review 'em, please.
Mr. Chairman, there's no changes. I make a motion to approve.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries. Next item is public hearing. Oh, not on? Okay. Public hearing.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Anaisa Licerio, Planner 2 for the City of Pharr. Tonight we have 2 items for your recommendation. Item number 1, Gilberto Espino, owner, has filed with the Planning and Zoning Commission a request for a change of zone from General Business District C to Townhouse Residential District RTH in order to develop and construct a 31-lot townhouse development. The subject site is located on the west side of South Cage Boulevard, approximately 1,150 feet south of West Hall Acres, and has a physical address of 2816 South Cage Boulevard. The property is legally described as being 0.599 acre, more or less, out of Lot 236 Kelly Pharr subdivision, Pharr, Hidalgo County, Texas. The property fronts South Cage Boulevard, a 120 to 150 principal arterial that runs north and south with a posted speed limit of 40 to 55 miles per hour as identified in the City of Pharr's thoroughfare plan. A portion of the property was rezoned to General Business District C from Agriculture and or Open Space District AO on August 2nd, 2021. The remaining portion of the property was rezoned to Residential Multifamily District RMF on August 2nd, 2021. The property to the north, south, and west were rezoned to Agricultural and or Open Space District AO when the property was annexed to the City of Pharr on May 4th, 1976. The property to the north was rezoned to General Business District C on December 4th, 2007. A portion of the property to the south was rezoned to General Business District C on October 3rd, 1989, leaving the remaining portion as Agricultural and or Open Space District AO. The property to the east was zoned to Planned Unit Development PUD on December 21st, 1982. There have been no other zoning requests within the vicinity of the subject property since that time. The property is generally designated for commercial use in the land use plan. The Residential Townhouse District RTH is established to provide adequate space and site diversification for medium-density residential development that is single-family on separate lots and typically owner-occupied. Townhouse development is a low to medium-density use, and before zoning to townhouse usage, the increased requirements for street, water, and fire protection, wastewater, drainage, and adequate open space must be met. Townhouse developments must be properly buffered from non-residential uses and protected from high volumes of non-single-family traffic or from pollution and or environmental hazards. 8 letters were mailed out to the surrounding property owners within a 200-foot radius on October 28, 2022. An illegal notice was published in the Advance News Journal on October 26, 2022. Staff received no response to the letters or the legal notice. Development Services is recommending approval of the request to rezone to Townhouse Residential District RTH as the property meets area requirements and has adequate ingress and egress. If approved, the owner must comply with all city ordinances and city department requirements. Note, this item will go before the City Commission meeting of November 21st, 2022 at 4 p.m. And we do not have representation.
Okay. This item requires a public hearing. Is there anybody from the affected area signed up to speak on this item?
No one in the affected area, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Open the item up to board discussion. discussion, questions, comments? None? Okay, we'll close the board discussion, open up the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries.
Item number 2, Pinpoint Investments LLC owner has filed with the Planning and Zoning Commission a request for a change of zone from single-family residential district R1 to single-family residential estate district R1E in order to develop and construct a single-family residential development. The subject site is located on the south side of West Owasso Road, approximately 580 feet west of North Sugar Road, and has a physical address of 1500 West Owasso Road. The property is legally described as 23.84 acres, more or less out of Lot 73, Kelly Pharr subdivision, Pharr, Hidalgo County, Texas. The subject property fronts West Owasso Road, a 100-foot minor arterial street that runs west and east with a posted speed limit of 30 to 45 miles per hour as identified in the City of Pharr's thoroughfare plan. The property and the properties to the west were zoned single-family residential district R1 on September 8, 2020. A portion of the property to the east was rezoned to high-density residential multifamily high-density district R4 on March 21st, 2016. The remaining section to the east and area to the south are currently zoned to agricultural and/or open space district AO. The city limits lie to the north side of the property. There have been no other zoning requests within the vicinity of the subject property since that time. The property is generally designated for single-family residential use in the land use plan. The single-family residential estate district R1E is established to provide for development of primary very low-density detached single-family residence on lots of not less than 10,000 square feet. It is intended for large lot subdivisions to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for residential development to meet the present and future housing needs. It is intended for areas that are properly buffered from non-residential uses and protected from pollution and/or environmental hazards or from high volume of non-single family traffic. 20 letters were mailed out to the surrounding properties owners within 200-foot radius on October 28, 2022, and a legal notice was published in the Advance News Journal on October 26, 2022. Staff received one response for information and one response in opposition to the letter. Development Services recommending approval of the request to rezone to single-family residential estate district R1E as the property meets area requirements, is aligned with the future land use plan, and has adequate ingress and egress. If approved, the owner must comply with all city ordinances and city department requirements. This item will go before the City Commission meeting of November 21st, 2022 at 4 p.m. And we do not have representation.
Okay, this item requires a public hearing. Is there anybody from the affected area signed up to speak on this item?
No one in the affected area, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the public hearing. Open up the item for board discussion. The buffer will be a full 360. Except for the Onawasa,
The buffer will what, sorry?
will be fully all the way around except for Onawasa. That's the entrance and exit, right?
The buffer will be for the commercial use, but they would put the perimeter fence for the subdivision if they wish to.
The buffer will only be required on the, up against a commercial property?
Correct.
Okay. Discussion? None? Okay, we'll close the board discussion, open up the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Second, okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Heriberto Martinez, Planner 2 for City of Pharr. Tonight, we only have one item before you for your recommendation. Item number 1, applicant Westwood Professional Services, Inc., representing KV Shadari, manager of KVS Development LLC, is requesting preliminary plat approval of the proposed Majestic International Trade Port Phase 1A subdivision. The property is legally described as being a 49.49 acre tract out of lots 93, 94, 97, and 98 of Block 31, also lots 95 and 96, Block 32, and a portion of a 40-foot road, as shown on the re-subdivision of Lot 1 and 5 to 32, inclusive of the San Juan Plantation subdivision. The property is located approximately 950 feet away from city limits along East Military Highway. The property is located within the City of Pharr extraterritorial jurisdiction, known as the ETJ. The adjacent zones are within City of Pharr extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ, to the north, south, east, and west. The property is designated for industrial use in the land use plan. Proposed use, excuse me, warehouses. The applicant has actually provided some variances. We do have a representation from the audience. They would like to present the variances, if you may, sir.
Good evening, commissioners, everybody,
Hold on,
staff.
Hold on,
Yes, sir.
before you start, were you advised that if this thing is denied, if you have 6 months, you have to wait to re-enter?
I think we had discussed that previously, one
You're
of
aware
our
of it?
planning and zoning meetings.
You are aware of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're not interested in withdrawing it then?
I do not have the power of withdrawing right now. And the last letter that we had from the agenda packet actually said that the city staff recommended approval. So I'm actually surprised to see disapproval on there.
Just briefly, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you please just state your name for the
Yes.
record, please?
Mario Garcia, I'm a project manager with SAM Engineering and Surveying here locally in McAllen, Texas. Would you like, should I continue? Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Heriberto, for the description of the project. Yes, we are asking for some variances for this proposed subdivision and ultimately a development with our client. We are representing them locally on the public infrastructure side of things, making sure that we adhere to all the City of Pharr and any other applicable utility districts in the area to provide the services required to get through the subdivision approval process. We have 2 variances that are being requested for the project. Variance number 1 is to waive the requirement to upgrade an existing 10-inch water main to a 12-inch water main on US 281, which is on the northern boundary of the subdivision. And I'm gonna read pretty much what our client has provided here for their request for this variance. The acceptable existing conditions of the water main along US 281 will remain in place. Proposed on-site fire protection design is a private 12-inch fire service water line that is fed and pressurized by a water tank, roughly 300,000 gallons, and a pump system. The proposed on-site fire suppression system will meet or exceed state and local codes to ensure fire safety needs are met. Additionally, we are proposing to connect the existing 10-inch water main that is controlled by Military Highway Water Service Corporation to a existing 12-inch water main that belongs to the City of Pharr to provide redundancy in the system, therefore increasing capacity of the existing line. And we feel the proposed connection between the 2 entity water mains provides sufficient improvement to the overall system and meets the intent of the city requirement. So in short, we would maintain the existing 10-inch water line on the northern boundary of the property. We won't upsize it, but we will add an additional connection to the City of Pharr water main to increase that water capacity and flow through that line. So that's variance number 1, is to keep the line as is without upsizing it by tapping into an existing City of Pharr water main. And The second variance that we are proposing is to waive the requirement to install 6 public fire hydrants spaced at 300 feet along US 281. The reason why we are proposing this variance is because the existing 10-inch line on the northern boundary of the property is not fire rated. So any fire hydrant that will be installed on this line will basically not operate efficiently because of the water line not being fire rated. Therefore, these fire hydrants would be installed and painted black and would not provide the service that they should given the existing conditions of the water main. And that's variance number 2.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this item requires a public hearing. Is there anybody from the affected area signed up to speak on this item?
This item does not require a public hearing, sir.
No?
Let me continue on the packet.
Okay.
That was a variance part, sir. Thank you. Then recommendations by city staff recommends disapproval of the preliminary plat and variances has requested. No information, data, or calculations as required by the fire department related to the fire flows have been received. Attached are the required conditions that should be complied with. Also, note that this item will go before the City Commission on November the 21st, 2022 at 4 p.m.
We have the fire chief here. Do you have any comments, sir?
Pilar Rodriguez, Fire Chief for the City of Pharr Fire Department. The only comment we have is that all we're requiring the developer to do is to meet minimum city standard as adopted by the City Commission. For an industrial development, which is the land use classification here, requires a minimum of 12-inch water line, so that's why we're requiring a 12-inch water line. It also requires fire hydrants at 300-foot spacing, so that is the basis for the requirement for the 6 hydrants based on the frontage for the property along US 281.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for him? No? Okay, thank you. That it? Anything else? Okay. Give open item up, board discussion?
I have a question, Chairman. What happens to the pressure and flow? I guess this is for the gentleman. It would change from a 10-inch line to a 12-inch line.
If the 12-inch line, if the 10-inch line is solely upsized to a 12-inch water line, it will not or should not gain additional capacity or flows simply because the existing flows won't change based on the diameter of that pipe. We had previously done some fire flow testing along a City of Pharr public fire hydrant, and flows from that hydrant itself are low. I believe they were in the range of static pressure 52 psi. Relatively, that is low for a fire flow support mechanism for development. Domestic service shouldn't be an issue. That's kind of what we're looking at. So that's why the water line is being proposed to tap into this City of Pharr main as well as its existing connection to add flow. So by upsizing, we won't add any flow to this line. By connecting to a secondary source, we will add flow for this development and ultimately that line if it ends up extending further in the future and if there's any additional taps.
So will you be able to meet the required pressures for that the city requires right now for as fire safety?
The fire safety flows are being managed on site from a private system by the developer providing their own private $300,000 gallon tank and
They
a
have
pump system.
also?
Yes, and a pump system. So it kind of goes back to on-site or hydrants along a 300-foot spacing on the frontage. If those were to service the subdivision, they would not ultimately because the flows are not there. That's why the on-site fire line and loop pressurized system internally will provide these fire hydrants to service its entire 49.49 acre tract, because all of this is managed privately through the developer's expense through their fire suppression system that they'll have for on-site services, and also a building suppression system internally to the building.
So that fire pump, I'm assuming, is going to be inspected annually as required by state code, by NFPA standards, correct?
There should be a maintenance plan associated with the fire suppression tank and the pump system, as well as the general reviews of the fire suppression system for the building. Yes, sir.
Has a similar system been implemented anywhere here in the valley?
I am working on a project for the Wesleco Industrial Park, and we are looking, and that's with North Alamo Water System. Very similar situation. They have low pressures right now from a modeling perspective because the line's not built yet, but that's what's being considered. It's actually around a 250,000 gallon tank to be considered, with its own pump room and riser to supply that fire loop system internally within the private site itself.
So after the $250,000 are depleted,
Gallons?
Gallons are depleted, then the system no longer works?
No, because there is a requirement that this gallon or this tank be filled within 8 hours, which we've discussed in previous planning and zoning meetings, and I believe with the fire marshal as well. So that requirement is there, and the system will be required to meet that generation rate for the tank itself.
Okay, so wouldn't the 12-inch line and the 4 fire hydrants take care of the whole establishment there?
There's more internal hydrants within the property that serve all the buildings and all the on-site improvements than there will be just along the frontage. And so we have frontage with the development itself, with a water line just looping all around the site that has fire hydrants being tapped at that same spacing, but they're being fed off of the system's private pressure system and tank versus the low flow, 10-inch water line that's existing.
I have a question for our city staff. Do we know what the minimum requirement of pressure and flow is for the city right now?
For Pilar, that question.
So to answer your question, the minimum pressure for the system is 20 psi. That's the minimum that will be allowed on the system. But I wanna point for clarification, and I left out one additional requirement on top of the minimum 12-inch line, the fire hydrant spacing. We also require that the water line be fed from a second source, in other words, looped. This existing 10-inch line is connected to a 6-inch line that's fed from the east, Military Water Supply Corporation, and that 10-inch line is basically a dead-end line. It's the end of the line, and it's being fed by a 6-inch. So the additional requirement that I failed to mention earlier was that it's required to be connected to a loop system. The pressures that the engineer referred to were taken off a 12-inch line that is just on the west side of Veterans and Military, and that's where the City of Pharr water system ends. And so those flows were taken off of the City of Pharr water line. We have been unable to verify what the existing flows are on the 10-inch that's connected to the 6-inch. If we had that data, maybe they could model those flows, and we could see what that 10-inch line is actually flowing to determine if it meets the minimum requirements for fire flow. And he is correct. They will be installing a storage tank with approximately 300,000 gallons of storage that will be feeding the sprinkler systems for the proposed building sites and their internal fire hydrant system. But once that's depleted, then we'll have, say there was a fire out there, then we'd have to rely on the 10-inch line, if it had hydrants on it, to continue our suppression efforts in that area. The NFPA requirement also requires that the tank be refilled, and he alluded to that, within an 8-hour period. We're not able to verify whether the existing 10-inch, again, connected to the 6-inch, can fill that tank in a 8-hour period. We think that their internal system is a good system, a solid design to service the sprinkler system, because that's really what it's designed to do, is service the sprinkler system in each building. The issue is the primary water supply, which is the 10-inch along military highway. So,
Was that all included in the comments? I didn't see that information. Do you know?
Is there any evidence that the system that with this pump and stuff would take care of the sprinkler system and a existing fire within 1 or 2 buildings at the same time?
yes, sir, the engineer has provided us with the calculations based on the elevated storage, or the storage tank being full to capacity, and it will meet the fire flows for the sprinkler system. And it'll meet the fire flows for the internal fire hydrants. But then once that's exhausted, the 300,000 gallons of water exhausted, then we're unable to determine if we can sustain fire flows after that.
Can you
And
answer
yeah,
that question?
just
or-
one more point for clarification. We are tying in the system to that 12-inch line on the west. So
What feeds that 12-inch line from the west?
the city of Pharr system, water system, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, hello, Ruben Rosales, Public Utilities Director for the records. As far as that line, that has to be an agreement between both entities, which is Military Highway and us. We have not had any agreement between either one of us.
Out of curiosity, what's gonna be built there? Warehouse? You got
Yes, sir.
manufacturing or,
I think it's mostly shipping and
Produce?
probably manufacturing.
okay,
Mhm.
now I can understand the need for, you know,
Yes,
okay.
yes, sir.
If we're gonna tie into the 12-inch, then would we be able to fill up that 300,000 gallon tank if you need to?
I think what's in question is the flows itself already existing within the 10-inch water line from Military Highway Water Service Corporation, and what those flows, with the addition of the city of Pharr flows, once the line ties in, what those would be. Once we understand that information, we'll have to prove that it can indeed meet the 8-hour refill time for the tank. And all that's being performed, I believe, by a certified fire protection consultant that's on the project as well.
And this project is comfortable with that type of system to be able to handle all of the warehouses that are there?
Yes, sir. It's my understanding that Pacheco Coke, Westwood Company, who's the on-site civil engineer for this development, that this is somewhat typical for them in other areas, central and northern Texas, where they have sometimes 4-inch water lines and 6-inch water lines feeding the entire development. And they've done this in the past. At least that's what they've expressed, and this is the route that they are pursuing for this project. Yes, sir.
Sound feasible. Anyway, can we go into executive session? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let's go to executive session.
Okay. Okay. In accordance with chapter 551 of the Texas Code, Government Code, section 551.071 through 551.087, the city of Pharr hereby gives notice that Planning and Zoning Board may meet in a closed session, closed executive session. Time is 6:29. Time is 6:49, and we have returned from closed session, and we will continue with board discussion. The representative, sir. At this time, we'd like to give you another opportunity to consider the withdrawal, because, you know, it'll be 6 months before you can apply again. You need to talk to your boss or whatever. We'll wait on you and see what you,
Let me get him on the phone.
huh?
Let me get him on the phone,
Okay.
and I'll be right back. Thank you again for allowing me to have that consideration with our client. At this time, they'd like to formally withdraw the application.
And you wanna
Yes, sir.
withdraw it? Okay. So then we're done with that one then. Okay. Next item is, announcements. Any announcements? None?
No, sir, just one thing. November 28th is our next scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We do have two public hearing items that have been advertised for that meeting. It is the Monday after the holiday, and we just wanted to make sure if, you know, we would have quorum, if the members would be present on Monday the 28th.
Yes. I'll be here. We'll be here. I'll be here.
Thank you.
Okay. Only one left, adjournment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to adjourn. I'll second.
Second. All those in
Mr.
favor say
Sherman,
aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Sherman, Mr. Sherman, I would like to wish the staff a happy Thanksgiving and a safe holidays.
Okay, all those,
I know that you've adjourned, but just officially for the record, because he withdrew and the item was still on the agenda, there would have been a no action, because they requested withdrawal. So, just to clarify on the record, that was the board's intent, was to take no action
Okay.
because it was withdrawn.
so-
Is that correct? Just,
Yes,
I'd like to get
yes,
a,
we didn't
Okay.
act on it, we just,
okay, thank you.
okay? Okay, all those in favor of
Adjourn.
adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries. We are adjourned.